Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Thursday, July 17th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in beautiful, historic downtown Lowell. And pleased today to be joined by our special guest. You're probably familiar with him if you've been a loyal reader of Inside Lowell since our inception almost 3 years ago today. He's written a number of articles about, well, frankly, somebody I knew nothing about and didn't even know of, and I believe many folks didn't know a lot of, but we know a lot more now. And man, are there a ton of connections out there with history in the professional sports world. We're talking about Bucky Lou and the author of the book, the original Bucky Lou, Chris Boucher, joining us here in the WellPoint Studios. Chris, welcome. Glad to have you here on the Pulse.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Teddy.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We were hoping we were set up to have Patrick Sullivan, the former general manager of the Patriots, whose family owned the Patriots, founded the Patriots, and had a connection to Bucky Lou, which we will talk about. Unfortunately, last-minute scheduling conflict for him, unable to join us, but there's a great story here to tell, and it's a developing story because along with your original book, the original Bucky Lou, which I've been fortunate enough to get a copy of in advance and be able to read as well. You're working on the next book as we speak, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's at the publisher right now. It's due to be published in the fall. I don't have a firm date, but the expectation is November or December.
All right. Well, please let us know because we're happy to get the word out, and I can't wait to learn even more of the stories. We're going to talk about Chris and Bucky Lou a little bit. First, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, if I may. Ray Booten, he is a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. He is a certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, you need to get in touch with Ray Booten. It's easy enough to find, gang, online, realestaterayBooten.com. That's realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint for hosting us here in the WellPoint Studios. WellPoint is the only health plan offering health care benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thank you, WellPoint. Thank you, Ray. We got some other sponsors. We'll thank them in a few minutes, but let's get right down to it with Chris Boucher, author of the original Bucky Lou and author of, did you tell me before we recorded 12 articles?
Yes, I had to go back and read them all, 12 articles. No wonder no one's buying the book. We're giving it away for free on Inside Lowell. Yes, 12.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give you like benefits at some point if this goes on. A little bit about you though. On Amazon when we first kind of connected, I went and I looked, and it says author lives north of Boston. Yeah. That you live really close to here, as a matter of fact.
Yes, so I'm basically a lifelong Lowell resident. Probably should be more specific about that going forward, but yeah, live in Lowell, have most of my life.
If you're trying to sell a book, you got to say Boston. But so in Lowell, we don't just say we're from Lowell. You also have to now give your neighborhood as well.
Yes. Okay. So I live in South Lowell / Belvedere. Not sure. Depends who you ask. Okay. Depends where you're selling a house or not, I guess. So I think it's technically South Lowell, which is fine. My favorite Lowell neighborhood.
All right. How did you learn of Bucky Lou? Because I'm going to tell you, I'm a huge sports fan. I covered sports for almost 15 years, and even in my radio gig, I did a ton of sports. And I thought I knew everything there was to know, every Lowell connection to sports. I thought I knew anybody who got close to the major leagues, people who competed in the Olympics. I had never heard the name Bucky Lou until you reached out to me to tell me about your book and say, hey, I'd love to have this article. How did you learn about Bucky Lou?
So like a lot of people, although I have been a basketball fan most of my life, I didn't really know much about basketball prior to the NBA. So I knew the game was invented in 1891 like everybody else. Then there was a big 50-year gap, and then the NBA started. So I actually read a book about a Jewish basketball team that played in about the 19-teens or 1920s by Douglas Stark. And I found it really fascinating because it pointed out there was this whole era of basketball that I knew nothing about. And the teams of those days were largely ethnic teams. So you had black teams, Jewish teams, Irish teams, and so on. So I wanted to see what kind of basketball might have been played in my family's neighborhood in Lowell, which was Pawtucketville, which was a French Canadian neighborhood. And I found that there was a team, and that was pretty fascinating, starting way back in 1901. But more interesting was the fact that this team, this specific team from Pawtucketville, which had a pro team in the New England League, was the first integrated professional basketball team in history. And that was because Bucky Lou was on that team. So that was my kind of first knowledge about him. And once I heard that, I did all I could to learn more about him. I was disappointed to find that there were no books about him. So I set out to write that book.
And you, along the way, you uncovered a bunch of connections. He's the first Black professional player in all of the United States.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
And he did that. He managed to pull that off in an era where it was very difficult for Blacks in any field.
Yes.
To be able to succeed and really for people who were owning teams or whatnot to even be associated with them. You actually, there was a passage in one of your articles for Inside Lowell, and again, InsideLowell.com, enter Bucky Lou or Chris Boucher in the search bar, and you'll find all these stories. But there was a period there where he was kind of in the midst of an uptick in Klan activity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you had mentioned his partnership with the Sullivans, and I'm sure we'll get more into that. But during that period of time, early 1920s, there was actually a cross burning on Fort Hill in 1923 and some other Klan activity as well. So the Klan was making a comeback at that point, fueled largely by anti-immigrant feeling, but they also had the same kind of anti-African-American thoughts and feelings that they had always had. So yes, this was all happening while Bucky Lou was not only playing, but also running teams as well. So in addition to being basketball's first Black professional player, he was actually the first Black owner of an integrated franchise starting in 1915 in Lowell and then going on from there for another 10 years or so.
And he even did some refereeing as well.
He did everything.
He loved the game.
Yes.
Clearly he loved the game of basketball, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He had a 25-year career, player, coach, manager, referee, franchise owner. He did it all.
So tell us a little bit about his upbringing. How did he come to be the first Black professional player?
Okay, so he was born in what was then Drake-it, but became Lowell in 1884.
Pawtucketville.
Yes.
Right.
His parents ran a dry cleaning shop downtown, just a few blocks from here, where Lou Family Square is, near the John Street parking garage. He did not go to high school, so he did his 8 years of grade school, and then he went to work at his parents' dry cleaning facility. So then his basketball is not played at Lowell High School, but was played at the YMCA. So starting in 1898, he played at the YMCA, and that's really where he learned to play basketball.
How did he develop the skills to start to compete at the upper levels? And again, this is before the NBA, so it might be hard for folks to fathom the way the game was kind of tailored and set up then. But, you know, I'm not even sure, were there high school programs or college programs back then that he could have potentially participated in? Yeah,
so Lowell High School had a team. So if he had gone there, he could have played.
He could have played, okay.
But since he didn't, the YMCA had a team for people like him who went right to work after grade school, which is not unusual in those times, especially since, like Bucky Lou, his parents owned a business. And he was, as the firstborn, he was going to go there and help them out.
All right. So was there an inkling then of how good of a player he was? Who noticed him? Who discovered him?
So there was the coach, what they called then the physical director of the YMCA was a man named Victor Meister, and he had a long career in basketball at local YMCAs. So he appears to have been kind of a mentor of sort to Bucky Lou. So Lou also played for him, but he's also captured in the box scores. Sometimes he was the scorer or the timer or things like that. So it seemed like Victor Meister was setting him up for not only a career as a player, but one as an official as well, more than that. As far as being discovered, the Sun, the Courier Citizen, the newspapers of the day were all over him. So when he was about 16, 17, 18, he was also captain of the YMCA team, led them to several Merrimack Valley championships. And he was someone that anyone in the area would be familiar with his name because it was in the papers every day throughout basketball season.
So he was a known commodity.
Absolutely. And the family was.
All right. And now any mom and dad that's done the traveling with their kids, be it their high school teams or this crazy AAU circuit or whatever, you know there's a big jump from that level, grade school, high school, even college, D1 college, to professional basketball. What was the jump like at that point? How difficult was it to get from playing club basketball at the YMCA to actually playing that day's version of professional ball?
Yeah. So it was difficult for him. So he initially signed to play his first pro game when he was 18 in 1902, but only as a sub and someone without a contract. So according to his kind of recollection of it, the local press was clamoring for the team to add him, and the manager did so reluctantly. But as I said, he only did so as a sub.
Reluctantly because he was African American, or just because he was a young kid and not yet a totally known commodity?
Probably all of those things. Yeah, probably. I imagine all of those things. Like that's not hasn't been recorded. Unfortunately, the man who signed him passed away about 12 or so years later. So that hasn't been recorded, but I imagine it was all those factors. Clearly race had to be one, right? Because he was going to be the first. No one had tried to play, no black player had tried to play pro basketball yet, but in baseball, there was a firm color line. The major leagues were not accepting African-American players. So this was certainly a hurdle to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, just by comparison, this is a full 40, maybe 50 years before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Major League Basketball, in Major League Baseball, and around the time that you start to see Chuck Cooper and the Celtics also start to work. So this was, this little piece of American history and race relations and whatnot actually played its way out in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Yes.
At the turn of the 20th century.
Yes. So it happened a generation before all of that, yet had an influence on that too, which I'm sure we'll get to later.
Yeah, definitely. So how good was he? How good was he? How good was the level of ball being played in the gymnasiums and arenas of Lowell, Massachusetts?
So I think it was good. So Lowell was actually an early hotbed of basketball and is described by a former basketball historian who worked for the Basketball Hall of Fame. He has a website which has been enormously helpful for me called the Pro Basketball Encyclopedia, and he describes Lowell as an early hotbed of basketball. Local games would attract about 2,000 fans, which is as much as they could hold in Huntington Hall.
More than a WNBA game that doesn't have Caitlin Clark playing.
Maybe, yeah. So yeah, it was a big deal. There were a lot of Lowell players. All that said, the New England League, where Lou started, was a major league. It was recognized as a major league of its day because while it was called the New England League, it also imported players from New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia. So all of the leagues at that time were regional, but this was probably about the widest regional league that there was. There wasn't yet the transportation for that, people like West Coast teams or even Midwest teams at that point. So it was a recognized major league, I would say. So Bucky Lou was good. He was really good.
Was there, so you mentioned that, there was the Negro leagues in Major League Baseball.
Yes.
You were not allowed. If you were black, if you were African American, you could not play in the other leagues. Was there a Negro League version of these basketball leagues that Lou could have opted to play for?
Not at that time.
Okay.
So the game was invented in 1891. Pro League started about 1898, and they were all white. So the game was so new, maybe there wasn't the interest. I mean, unfortunately, at that point, African Americans didn't have access to gymnasiums, unlike kind of like Massachusetts and a lot of New England. The YMCAs were segregated, and the YMCAs that black folks had access to did not have gyms. So they were not really, at that point, there wasn't a lot of black folk playing basketball. So Lou was the first to attempt to integrate basketball. There really was no other option for him than to join this otherwise white league.
All right. You mentioned he was signed only as a bench player.
Yeah.
That changed.
Yes.
How long did it take for the owner of that team, the teammates, and everybody else in the league to recognize, oh, I don't care where this guy came from, what his skin color is, what he says. This guy can just flat out play. He belongs here. He's a star. How long did that take?
So I think it only took a few minutes. So as I said, he was signed as a sub. He's sitting on the bench. As the game is about to start, one of the Lowell players could not play and had to come out of the game. So the manager, James Gray, who had signed Lou, tried to send out 4 of his players to play the other team's 5. Now, this game was in Marlboro.
The manager would rather play 5-on-4 then insert an African American onto the court.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So, but what happened was the game was in Marlborough. However, about 50 fans from Lowell had come down for the game. And according to Lou's account, they threatened to riot if the manager did not put him in the game.
True Lowellians. That's the spirit.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because they likely had money on the game, which may explain why they traveled and why they were so interested in seeing a fair matchup. So this is just speculation, but my feeling is they're probably more concerned with the color green than black or white. But that's fine, because it helped Lou, because he was good enough. They wanted to see him out there because he deserved to, right? So he got in the game. From then on, he played well. He was in a headline the next day. He played with the team the rest of the season. He was signed to a contract shortly thereafter, and then he was a fixture with the team the rest of the way. He was known as a popular player throughout New England.
How long was his playing career, for all intents and purposes?
Roughly 25 years.
So he played into his 40s.
Early 40s.
Wow.
Yeah. So he said he retired in 1926. The last record I have of him playing was 1924. He said 1926 in Vermont. I haven't run that box score down, but I'm working on it. So yeah, roughly 25 years in the pro game.
Yeah, research is not an easy thing for anybody who's listening to this. This is Chris's passion, because this is a real job to do it.
Yeah.
And so he played for 25 years.
Yep.
Naturally, like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, he accumulated all sorts of wealth.
Not so much.
And passed away a rich man. What was the pay? What was the pay? When you say professional basketball player, what was the pay in those days?
So there was a salary cap in those days.
Are you kidding?
And yes, the pay was capped at $5 per game.
Which $5 may have been compared to the average person, it may have been a lot. But
yeah, so it's about $150, $175. So it wasn't bad, but it wasn't enough to make a living.
Yeah, I'm sure he fell back on the dry cleaning business as well. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that helped. I don't know, but I know he spent a lot of time in the gym. And if you see the kind of pictures of him as he's progressing through his career, he added a lot of muscle. So the game was brutal back then. He stayed with it. He spent a lot of time at the Y working out. I'm sure he put in his fair share of time at the dry cleaning establishment as well. But my feeling is during the basketball season, he spent a lot of time in the gym.
Yeah, you highlighted that in some of your articles, the physical nature of the game. Think the bad boy Pistons in the 80s, but really on steroids, because the rules were still being defined of the game. And again, as the first African-American playing, and oftentimes the only, right, for most of his career, I guess the only African-American player on the court, the opposition was going hard.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so the game was brutal. An early sports writer described it as a combination of football, murder, and a house on fire. And as Lou pointed out later in life, he got the Jackie Robinson treatment, so it was harder on him than anyone else. But he said that he gave it right back. He said it was rough but worth it. Once the fellow players kind of realized that he could take it, he was more or less accepted. There was still some racial issues and incidents and injuries and indignities that he had to suffer through. However, he was able to stick with it for those 25 years.
I was going to say the athletes themselves generally are the first to kind of accept once you prove that you belong. How long did it take though for the crowds, for the fans to start to accept you? The loyal Lowell fans we know, but they were road games, right? And as anyone familiar with the Jackie Robinson story knows, when he was on the road, it was a tough situation. What was travel like? Was he allowed to travel, stay at the same places as everybody? And did opposing fans in the arenas give him the same kind of treatment that we're now familiar with Jackie Robinson?
Yes and no. So I think his transition to the pro game was eased by the fact that he had played on the YMCA team. So he had already played in Concord, New Hampshire, Manchester and Nashua, New Hampshire, Haverhill, Mass, Portsmouth, a lot of these other cities. So he was known by a lot of those fans. That said, he did encounter a lot of trouble. It was once a game in New Hampshire where he couldn't find a place to stay after the game. Other times he was referred to as kind of the manager's valet in the newspapers. So folks were taking, shots at him for things like that. There were reports of crowds trying to shout him off the floor. In 1905, basically the best player in the game, Harry Huff, refused to take the court against him. And that became an issue. I'm sure we'll get into that later as well. But there were kind of recurring issues where race was made kind of a problem for him, and he had to deal with it. He had his share of adversity. He also had a number of allies as well. So maybe that's the silver lining for it, and something that I guess interests me as a white man writing about this Black experience, that he definitely had his struggles, but he had his friends and allies too.
We're chatting with Chris Boucher, a Lowell resident, author of the original Bucky 𝐂𝐤, the story of a Lowell kid who became the first Black professional basketball player in the United States of America. And he would play on the courts here prior to the NBA that we now know and sometimes love. We'll talk more about Bucky 𝐂𝐤, his career, but also his impact on sports and the amazing historical connections that turned up in Chris's research as well. First, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors. Of course, we've already told you about Ray Booten. If you're looking to buy or sell a home, business, or commercial property, get to the website, realestaterayBooten.com. RealestaterayBooten.com. That's the person you want to have working on your side. Thank you as well to WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that goes the extra mile. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to generations of families since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates. They bring all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City. Pirates' final home game of the regular season, really of the 2025 season, Friday, July 25th at the Tsongas Center against the Bay Area Panthers. Grab your tickets now. We got a bunch of them, InsideLowell.com. If you email me, TeddyPanos at InsideLowell.com or info@InsideLowell.com, I'm happy to get you some tickets to go out and see the team in its final 2025 regular season tilt. We continue our discussion here with Chris Boucher, the author of the original Bucky 𝐂𝐤, the author who's working on another book that's going to come out in the fall. We'll tell you how you can get both of those books. But so we've talked a little bit of baseball, right? Obviously, anytime you talk about integration of sports in America, the Jackie Robinson story comes up.
Yep.
But he was involved in kind of another integration, and it goes back through a connection to the Cleveland Indians. The then Cleveland Indians, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so there are a number of baseball connections there. So I guess to start at the beginning, so the summer before Bucky 𝐂𝐤 went pro, Louis Sockalexis, who was the original Cleveland Indian, was playing pro ball in Lowell. He was attempting a comeback. He started with the Indians in about 1898, I think. Had a really strong start to his career there, and then kind of fell off due to injury and an issue with alcohol. So he was attempting a comeback later, and it was 1902. Where
his comeback was coming through Lowell, Massachusetts. Though,
yes,
right?
He played for Lowell, played for Lowell Tigers at Spalding Park, which is, I think, now 𝐂𝐤, or whatever we're calling that, or next to 𝐂𝐤.
Stadium, yeah.
So he played there, and it was his best and most complete season as a pro. So it wasn't Major League Baseball. I think it was about comparable to AA, but he hit about 300. Was a good power hitter, not much of a fielder, but he had his best and most complete season as a pro there. And I just wonder if that eased the path for 𝐂𝐤 a little bit into basketball, because he did sign in the fall. Sockalexis was a fan favorite. He was very well treated, very well thought of by the Lowell fans. Also, James Gray, the man who ultimately signed 𝐂𝐤 that fall, was a baseball man himself. He was friends with Fred Lake, who was running the Lowell baseball team, and James Gray himself later succeeded Fred Lake as the man who was running that baseball team. So I wonder if those factors played into 𝐂𝐤's opportunity.
Yeah, it's certain when you're blazing a trail. But if there are others that are blazing a different trail, but it's kind of a similar journey they're taking, and they're near you, it makes sense that there would be he would draw some inspiration from that. Sockalexis was actually and I think this was in another article that you wrote for us at Inside Lowell. He's believed to be the person behind the old Cleveland Indians mascot, or should I say the logo. They're now known as the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if everybody remembers Chief Wahoo or the Major League Baseball movies, you've seen that logo, that mascot.
Yeah. Yeah. So in those days of early sports, teams didn't have formal nicknames. So it was just like the Cleveland baseball team. And they were calling them the Spiders before 𝐂𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐬 got his start there. But since he got off to a hot start, was a fan favorite, was in the papers all the time, the press and the fans started calling the team the Cleveland Indians. They kept that name for a while. I think ultimately that led to the character that became Chief Wahoo, and ultimately, you know, some maybe abuse of that is what led to them changing the name to the Cleveland Guardians. But that's the history of that.
There was also a connection to what we now know as UMass Lowell. Was it Lowell Tech back in those days as well?
Yeah, I think it was Lowell Tech School. So in 1903, basically, as Lou was finishing up his rookie season as a pro basketball player, he coached Lowell Tech School. So I just found this in one line in one paper, but it clearly articulated that he was the coach of the team as they were starting their basketball program. He also coached there in 1922, and that season was much better covered by the newspapers. I think basketball was more of a thing. But this was the early days of college basketball. So by 1903, at the age of 19, Bucky Lou had integrated both professional basketball and college basketball as well.
Quite the resume for the young
Not a
man.
bad start.
And that, of course, at some point was 2024 that UMass, or 2023, where he was actually, there was a plaque put up in his honor at UMass Lowell. It was a big ceremony, and some of his family, was out there as well. Yes. And then you also mentioned Bucky Lou, what is now Bucky Lou Square. Yeah. Out by John Street.
Yeah, almost. So it's the Lou Family Square.
The Lou Family
and it's
Square.
Been there since the 90s. So while I had only heard of Lou about 5 years ago, the local historians are kind of aware of his family, and they have been recognized. So a number of historians from the Lowell Center, the Center for Lowell History at UMass Lowell, do have some archives. So Martha Mayo, Tony Sampis, Chris 𝐂𝐡𝐫𝐢𝐬 have done some work on him and have documented all of that. So back in the 90s, there was an effort to get the family more recognition, and that's where Lou Family Square came about, and that's a thing. Since then, as we're working with the family to get him even more recognition, the YMCA in Lowell has put up a plaque in recognition of him starting his career there. UMass Lowell put up a plaque as well at a Costello Center. There's an exhibit at the Tsongas Arena right next to the Dippin' Dots, so it's a very convenient and popular location.
I'm going to have to go look for it now.
Yeah, no, it's a nice display, and it kind of documents his full history as a pioneer. That was dedicated at a Pirates game, Black History Month. I think that was last year. And the family has attended all these events, and they are very supportive of these efforts, and also looking forward to him being inducted into the American Basketball Hall of Fame in Detroit in November.
All right. You say the family, we're talking grandchildren.
Yes.
I remember there was a famous photo we put out. It was his granddaughter.
Yes. So his closest living relative is his granddaughter, Wendy Johnson, who lives in Milton. Her daughter lives in New York, and she comes back for these events too. So the family is very invested and very supportive of these efforts to get him the recognition that he deserves.
All right. We had mentioned that we were originally going to be joined as well by Patrick Sullivan, the former general manager of the New England Patriots, the son of Billy Sullivan Jr., who founded the New England Patriots in the old AFL days. There's a connection there that it wasn't in the original book, right? You've since uncovered that you can trace Bucky Lou back along and find the Billy Sullivan Sr., Billy Sullivan Jr.'s dad in Lowell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should point out that this is documented in the UMass Lowell Center for Lowell History as well. There was an article in the archives that I read. Martha Mayo had pointed this out to me. Found that kind of interesting, but I was able to find more documentation of that for the second book as the Lowell Courier-Citizen came online, and they had covered a lot of this material as well. So there's a couple connections there. So the first one is in 1915, when Bucky Lou owned the first he became the first Black owner of an integrated pro basketball team and that team was hosted in Lowell. It appears that William Sullivan Sr., who then worked as a sports reporter for the Lowell Sun, covered him. Can't say for sure because there were no bylines, but the sports reporter for the Sun in those days covered him glowingly, praised him both as a player and an executive. So that was very interesting, something I was interested in learning more about. Then, in addition to that, in the early 1920s, Lou partnered with Billy Sullivan Sr. and his brother Joseph. So at that point, the Sullivan brothers had bought the Crescent Arena, which was the largest kind of sports arena in Lowell, and they partnered with Bucky Lou to bring basketball to that arena. So he brought in a couple of his teams. He had a Lowell-based team. He had one based in Nashua as well. For the first year of their partnership, for the next year, they tried to revive the New England League. Bucky Lou ran the Lowell team, and William Sullivan Sr. was the president of the league. That didn't last very long based on the poor economy in the area of those days. And then the next year, they started a City Pro League where Joseph Sullivan was the treasurer and Bucky Lou was the head referee. So they had kind of an extended partnership there, which I found fascinating.
You mentioned the Crescent Arena. Where exactly was that?
Hurd Street. So it's basically a parking lot now. It burnt down. I don't know if that was in the 40s or the 50s. So unfortunately, none of the arenas where Lou played still stand. The only place that he coached, which is still viable in Lowell, is the Southwick Hall, kind of the flagship building for UMass Lowell. But the Crescent Arena was on Hurd Street.
Okay. And what you say it was the biggest arena at the time. How big was it? How many did it seat? What else did it host? Okay.
So yeah, good question. So in those days, there weren't really dedicated sports arenas. There were kind of like halls or places you could host events. So they had, for sports, they had basketball, boxing, and also roller polo, if you've ever heard that. That was like ice hockey on roller skates, but that was a big deal in that era. So those are the sports of the day that they hosted, and they would hold between 1,500 and 2,000 fans, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so it was a good size facility.
Yeah, those are respectable numbers for those days. By comparison, the Boston Braves used to get about the same number of fans. I think their opening day, in one of those years, maybe it was 1915, they had about 1,500 fans. So the Red Sox did better, but still, for a professional sports in those days, those were a respectable crowd.
And I'm going to guess that, Billy Sullivan Sr.'s son, Billy Sullivan Jr. Now the Sullivan family, very well known in Lowell, Sullivan Brothers printers. And, we Lowellians are proud of the fact that the Billy Sullivan had a connection to the Mill City. Yeah. I'm going to guess the son was kind of there along some of these ventures. And I'm going to guess he was also influenced by the fact that his father, white Irishman, in an era where there were no equal rights, despite what the laws may have been changed to at the time. It sounds to me like he may have been influenced by this because he took kind of that philosophy into the founding of the AFL. The AFL was far advanced from the National Football League when it came to race relations and the integration of African American players, right?
Yes, that is true. So Billy Sullivan Jr. would have been a small child, so he would have been too young to be involved, but I do think that he was influenced by it. So as you pointed out, the Patriots started in the AFL, the American Football League. They caught up quickly to the rival NFL because they were much more open to black players than the NFL had been. So they didn't have a quota. They were reaching out to the HBCUs, and they were really looking to expand the talent base. And one of the ways that they did that was by looking more closely at black players and allowing them into the game. Ron Burton Sr., who is sometimes referred to as the first Patriot, is, I think, evidence of that. So I do think that Billy Sullivan Jr. was influenced by that family kind of philosophy and history, and that helped the AFL kind of quickly catch up to the NFL back in the 60s.
Yeah, and have you spoken to Pat Sullivan for the new book that you're writing now with the updated history of this?
Yes, absolutely. So I reached out to him, spoke a few times. He's gone through it and provided kind of a blurb for me. So I was really interested to see if we could establish that Billy Sullivan Sr. was the actual reporter covering Bucky Lou in 1915. Unfortunately, there's no way to do that. Like, Pat didn't really do that. He knew he was a sports reporter. He knew he was involved in newspapers. He was thought of as kind of a sports historian, but there's no real documentation of that. And Pat's kind of too far away to confirm that. But he did confirm that the family was open-minded, as a lot of the Irish in Lowell were. They were actually very supportive of Lou. And I don't want to put words in his mouth. Hopefully at some point, maybe you could get him on the show to talk about this as well. But he was certainly interested in history and could confirm his father's kind of outlook when he was building the Patriots, that he was open to all, regardless of color, as long as they could play.
Yeah, and Pat Sullivan, as we mentioned, was the general manager of the team for a lengthy period of time as well. So clearly the family was influenced by Billy Sullivan Sr., and that open-mindedness, for lack of a better term, was passed along through multiple generations. You mentioned there was a story you wanted to get back to where the best player at the time wouldn't take the court against Bucky Lou. It was at the Crescent Arena. Where he
it was not. And so it happened actually in Haverhill. So after Bucky Lou's rookie year in Lowell, he was picked up by an expansion team in Haverhill. So James Gray, the man who signed him and didn't want to play him, said he loaned Lou to Haverhill at the start of the next season. Then later he tried to get him back and couldn't. So you may be kind of picking up on the fact that James Gray is kind of a mysterious character, and I'm eager to learn more about him, because it's hard to say, was he an ally? Was he an opponent of Bucky Lou? Like, what was going on? It seems like
he seemed a little conflicted, right? He gave him an opportunity by taking the I'll call it courageous at the time step of signing him, putting him on the bench, but didn't seem to want to play him. And then it's like, all right, this guy's good. I can't keep him down anymore. Let me get him out of here if I can. And then realizing, a year later, oh shit, I screwed up this guy. I should have him on my team.
I don't know if James Gray is a hero or villain in the story. It's complicated.
Aren't we all a little bit of both when you get down to it?
Yeah,
right?
he's human, I guess. But he did sign him. They didn't want to play him. They let him go. Then he tried to get him back. I almost suspect that he let him go after the first year out of jealousy. So Bucky Lou had kind of become the face of the franchise. The first story I read about a Lowell loss, it was about, Lowell lost the game, blah, blah, blah. James Gray's picture accompanied the story. When they wrapped up their season, unfortunately, it was another loss, but now Bucky Lou's picture accompanied the story, and the caption described him as a star of the team, and the story went on to say that he was the one who did all of the playing for the team. So just my theory, but I suspect there may have been a little jealousy there on James Gray's part, that Bucky Lou had kind of taken over as the face of the franchise.
All right.
Maybe.
So how did this saga play out with the best player not wanting to play against Bucky Lou? He ended up getting guarded by him.
So now we're in 1905, and so Haverhill and Natick are the best two teams in the New England League. And by now, this is by far the best pro basketball team in the country, because their rivals, the National League, which was really just a Philadelphia-based league, had folded. And then there was another Western Massachusetts league that had folded as well. So all of the players had come into the New England League.
So the best players in the country were playing there. Again, there wasn't much of the West Coast that we know of today, and it was certainly still developing. So they didn't have the type of facilities, programs, et cetera, that the East Coast had.
Yes, and there was basketball in Midwest, but it was kind of too far away for the two leagues to kind of join up and do anything.
Okay, the famous Indiana.
Absolutely,
They think they were the home of basketball.
They were playing a long time ago too.
But it was really Springfield, Mass. So we're
That's
not
the official.
We're not letting the Hoosiers take that.
Absolutely. So Bucky Lou and Harry Huff, the man who refused to play him, the guy who was recognized as the best player of his day, were on basically the two dominant teams in the league. These were two super teams. So Bucky Lou's team was led by Ed Wachter, who's now in the Hall of Fame. Bucky Lou was then known as the best defensive player in the game. He wasn't much for offense. It may have been because he had shoulder issues. So he suffered from chronic dislocated shoulders, including that season in 1905. He had dislocated his shoulder 3 times. And after the season ended, a reporter had said that it just would no longer stay in place. That he was going to need to have something done with it at the end of the season. So anyway, we're at the start of that season. The two teams are squaring off in Haverhill. Harry Huff and his Natick teammates, who are mostly from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, take the floor, but they refuse to play while Lou is on the court. The only time they move actually is when Lou's teammates throw the ball at them and they have to dodge the ball to avoid injury. So this game is in Haverhill. And that's where Lou was playing at that time. He had a lot of fan support. The fans were making a big deal of it. They wanted to see the game go on. They wanted to see the best defensive player in the game play the best offensive player. However, Lou opted to sit the game out, and the game went on without him. I wonder why he did that. I suspect it was because he wanted to avoid a riot. It seems like things may have gotten ugly. He also may have had some inside information as well. So the game played out without Lou. However, the league had an emergency meeting after the game at midnight. They decided that they would have no color line in the game, that Bucky Lou would be able to play, and that if Harry Huff refused to play him, they would be fined again. They were fined for their first kind of infraction. To be fined again. If they continue to do it, then it would be thrown out of the league. So really kind of a historic moment here where the league put its foot down and said, as opposed to baseball, which has a color line, we will not have that color line.
Right. And that, again, today it sounds silly that would even be an issue, but think back 1920s, 1910, turn of the century. Yeah. I mean, that was rather courageous for the time and well before, as you said, and there were parts of Major League Baseball that even with Jackie Robinson pushed back on Branch Rickey and that whole movement by the Brooklyn Dodgers. So to have people here in our greater Lowell area, Haverhill area, like kind of take a stand and say, no, we're not doing that here. You want to play in this league, there's no color barrier. That's actually, kind of inspirational, dare I say.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So this is the height of the Jim Crow era. So separate but unequal is basically the law of the land, and has even spread from the South to the north and is observed in a lot of places. So yeah, this was very different. And as I said, the league, took this inspirational stand, said we won't be like baseball, which will not allow African-American players, but we will have an integrated league and we're going to stick with it.
All right. So the original book, the original Bucky Lou, published what year?
2023.
2023. How long did it take you to write this and do all this research?
Maybe about a year. It went pretty fast as books go because I was really fascinated by the topic and I thought I was racing the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. So I had reached out to them for stats on Bucky Lou a couple times and never got a response. And so I came up with the theory, which was very, very motivational, that the person who was receiving my queries wasn't answering them because they were writing that book.
They were trying to steal your work.
Yeah, or they were trying to get there. So like someone had to write the first book about him, right? So that's how that came about. So it came up pretty fast. As I said, I had a big assist from the UMass Lowell Center for Lowell History, and then the online newspapers that I was able to access pretty easily. One thing that really helped with my research is that a lot of these newspapers are now digitized and available online. So as opposed to the old days where you'd have to leaf through the newspaper page by page or go through the microfiche, you could actually do a keyword search on some of these key terms and get your information that way. So that was really helpful. So it went pretty fast. But as I said, I was fascinated with it. It was really kind of an obsession. And I wanted to get there first. I wanted to beat whoever was ignoring me at the Hall of Fame.
Well, you did that. Book is available where?
Everywhere good books are sold, including Lala Books.
Oh, Lala Books is carrying it too. Excellent.
Go there first.
Great. Yes, go to the local bookstore. Don't give Amazon all that money. Your second book, you said it's come out in the fall.
Yes.
Harry Bucky Lou, a biography of basketball's first black professional.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me that I when I think of him now, because of reading your stuff, he's the first black professional player, but he's actually first black professional because as you've highlighted, player, coach, also team owner.
Yeah. Everything. Manager, referee, he did it all. Yes.
Yeah.
End to end.
So he broke many color barriers. What is new? What will people find in this book? More details that they didn't see in the first one if they did purchase the first one?
Yeah. So it's another year of research. So a couple of things we probably highlighted already. So that he coached at UMass Lowell in 1903. So he was 20 years ahead of the schedule that was already kind of known about. The connection to the Sullivans is documented there as well. The proof that he influenced the Dodgers in putting together their first integrated baseball team in the U.S. in Nashua, because Jackie Robinson actually started in Montreal, but Branch Rickey wanted a foreign team in the U.S. that was integrated. They put that in Nashua because of the recommendation of a man who was a high school basketball superstar who played at halftime of Lou's games in Nashua in the early 1920s, and then became the newspaper editor and wrote about him. So he was basically the man who put his hand up when everyone else was rejecting the Dodgers' efforts to start an integrated farm team in the U.S. and said, yeah, actually Nashua will welcome them. And he knew that because he had witnessed kind of how beloved a figure Bucky Lou was way back in the 1920s. So a lot of stuff. Another year of research.
That was Holman Stadium up there in Nashua. Is that
that's
correct?
where it took place.
Yeah, right at
Yep.
exit 6. Exit 6, exit 7 area.
Yeah.
There. Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. So even the Dodgers' efforts to integrate Major League Baseball can be tied back.
Absolutely,
to
he was the
Bucky Lou.
proof, and we're lucky because the man who made that connection was a newspaper editor. He wrote a column. He wrote several columns about Bucky Lou and how beloved he was up there, and that he was the man who said, "Hey, Branch Rickey, you can put your team here." After Rickey had several rejections up to that point.
And I assume many of the African Americans who went on to become Dodger stars played there.
Yeah,
Although
so
Jackie Robinson did not, unfortunately.
Robinson not, because he started in Montreal, then he went to Brooklyn the next year.
Yeah, it didn't take long for him to make the leap.
Yeah, but Roy Campanella and Don Newcomb started in Nashua, and shortly thereafter joined Jackie Robinson in Brooklyn and won some pennants and a World Series.
Won a World Series as well. And that, I believe that team eventually became the Nashua Pirates, who I remember as a young kid, and then it became kind of the various forms of pro baseball up there. They're the Silver Knights now. I think it's like a collegiate level team, but a lot of baseball history there as well.
Yeah, so the Nashua Dodgers, I think, only existed for about 10 years. There's a couple good books out there about them, but it seemed like they were brought into existence basically to be an integrated team. Then once integration took off and all of the teams were integrated, the Dodgers no longer needed that kind of experimental team in Nashua.
Interesting. Okay. And then I'm trying to remember what year they actually moved out from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm sure they wanted
mid-50s?
Yeah, so they probably wanted their affiliates closer to home as well instead of on the East Coast.
Yeah,
but
perhaps. I mean, I know in those days, baseball's minor league network was a lot more extensive than it is now, but I think teams came and went.
All right. It's a fascinating story. It really is. And it's a story that I think as more and more people become familiar with, as we were talking off air, this should probably be a perfect feature for a Chronicle, on Channel 5 show or a feature on Nesson or whatnot. I think we got to work on getting that out there.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. So Lowell has certainly been very welcoming of Lou and open to the story. But yeah, I think the next step is to go beyond. And it's really nice that the American Basketball Hall of Fame in Detroit is going to welcome Lou.
Yes, he's about to be inducted, right?
And it seems inevitable that he would go into the Naismith, Basketball Hall of Fame. Sorry, I'm talking too much here. I got dry mouth. I apologize for that. That seems inevitable. So yeah, it's nice that the support is there in Lowell, and it seems like he deserves more than that as well.
All right. Well, if that does happen, I think a little share of the credit's going to go to you and others who have kind of preserved this history and brought it back into the forefront. Again, the original Bucky Lou, it is available now at Lala Books and, of course, Amazon.com or any place where you buy books. The new book, Harry Bucky Lou, a biography of basketball's first black professional. What do you think? You said the fall, September, October?
Yeah, November, December.
November, December.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like a great Christmas gift, does it not? For the sports fan on your list?
Yeah.
Or the historian and Lowellian on your list. I like it. All right. You'll let us know when, right? And
absolutely.
And we'll make sure Lala Books carries that one as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Chris Boucher, Thank you so much. We'll do that maybe next as we get a little bit closer, since the Sullivans are featured far more prominently in the new book. Let's see if we can reconnect with Pat and get him either in here or we'll do a Zoom with him. We didn't even mention that he's got this massive TV sports production company. He does NASCAR races, Fox sporting events.
Yeah.
So he's done well since his time with his family sold the Patriots.
He's done very well. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you to Chris Boucher. Thanks to you as well for tuning in here on the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the show that keeps its finger on the pulse of Lowell and the world around it. And oftentimes, Lowell and the world around it, there's no difference between them. Certainly not 6 degrees of separation. Tomorrow, Leslie Boder will join us as we wrap up another week here on Inside Lowell. We thank you. We'll look forward to talking to you again. Stay safe out there. Stay cool out there. Stay dry. Some rain going to move through today. And we will catch you on the other side.